All right, let's get started with a quick video. Can you hear that? All right, so those are just some photos over the last couple of days of some events that we've had and trying to get folks to realize that, pumpkins are valuable to more than uh, just pigs. So, um, let me get to my share. So I really appreciate the time today to talk a little bit about what we do at Pumpkins for Pigs Foundation. And as you can tell, we are probably well beyond our namesake. So what I'll do is we'll talk a little bit about what we're trying to solve, what we've been doing, how you can get involved, and then open it up for further discussion. So the food waste problem that we need to solve, a third of all food is wasted globally. So this is not a US problem only. I think that's pretty well known at this point. Americans are reportedly discarding more food than other countries, estimated at 40% or 92 billion pounds annually. In other countries, it's not that far behind. It's usually in the mid 30s. But we do tend to scale a little bit higher, and that could be for a variety of reasons. Perhaps what's most surprising to people is that 24% of the municipal waste in landfills is food, which means there are opportunities for us to make an impact every day to lower that number from our own households. It will take everyone that is in the food supply chain, but it is an opportunity for us to make different choices. And that food waste that breaks down in the landfill is causing 58% of the methane emissions that we experience from our landfills, which is significant. And in practical terms, that looks like over 50 million gas powered passenger vehicles. And I use those terms very specifically. That's what the scientists use. So it's important that we understand just how much that impact is having it all the time. But it is solvable. And if we take a minute to look at the EPA food waste scale, we fit in this niche where a lot of folks aren't working. So we can prevent food waste in the kitchen and what we buy, where we buy it, how we buy it. If we have extra, we try to make certain we get that to its continued highest purpose of feeding human beings on this planet in one way or another. And the next option is to feed the animals versus the next step would be compost before we get to landfill. And while we do have compost and we partners and we want to grow our compost partnerships for reasons we'll get into, we really want to use these foodstuffs for the nutrients that they have to offer. So we consider ourselves part of the food waste solution. Our mission is to reduce food waste by diverting all viable foodstuffs that include, but not limited to, the pumpkins and gourds and hay bales and things like that we have right now at this part of the season to farms, animal sanctuaries, rescues, and other places that can use it for animal feed. And as I mentioned, our mission, as you'll see, is well beyond our namesake, but people do remember the name. So how did we get started? I was born out of a conversation with a local farmer here in Loudoun County, Virginia in 2017. I went out there buying eggs again one fall, and I said, do you have any suggestions on what I could do with the pumpkins that are on my step? Because I'm about to put a wreath on the front door and now I've got a conflict. And he said, bring them by. My animals would love them. And from that, I started wondering, would other people be willing to go a bit out of their way, perhaps, to give those pumpkins that are on their front step? So we started with about 10 locations. I contacted all the folks that were in the farm market list, and I found an animal sanctuary near us. And we started with that. We actually doubled each year for the next couple of years. And of course, we ran into the pandemic where people weren't as sure. We weren't sure how we would survive that, given we didn't know a lot at the time. It was an outdoor activity, so that was good. And what we ended up finding in 2021 is a homesteader found us and put us in a homesteader Facebook group, and we grew overnight. And from that, we've just continued to grow. We now have a first location in Canada last year, getting us to about 600 locations across 43 states. We now have New Mexico this year. We have our first donation site in New Mexico. So we're excited about that. And thanks to the help here for making that happen. And we estimate we've diverted about 1.6 million pounds of foodstuffs from the landfills. And that's probably just the pumpkins and gourds and things like that, when we know there's a lot more that's happening. So in 2023, we diverted an estimated 800 tons. So that's the equivalent. And by diverting that and giving it to animals for feed, we netted a reduction or prevention of 334 tons of CO2. So we believe there's a lot more that we can do and we want to do. So we have 3 programs. We have in the middle, you'll see our fall and winter donation program. That's the one most people are familiar with. That's what's got us started. Starting in November 1st, going through the end of January, fall decor of all types, pumpkins, gourds, hay bales, stray, corn stalks, all of those sorts of things, plus holiday trees and garland, all of that can go back for feed. For those who don't know, the holiday trees, wreaths, and garlands are consumed by goats, and that's a nice treat for them. Over the pandemic, as people were building massive backyard gardens and not going into the office, they only had so many folks to give this wonderful produce to. And not everybody realizes that they can go to their master gardeners groups and find food pantries that will accept it. So the next best option again was to donate those to the donation sites in our programs. And finally, last year, we started working with organizations that have food pantries. They may be a food bank. They may offer prepared foods to the public, and trying to identify a way to redirect the viable foodstuffs from them that, for whatever reason, whether it's legal preference, the customers they serve are not willing or able to take that food, are they're still viable for animals for feed. So we're looking to, continue to expand that program. It's super simple to get involved. You navigate to our website, pumpkinsforpigs.org. You go to donate food. You get a search page, and you'll have the option to search just by state. Or if you're in the state of Virginia, for example, where we have over 100 locations, and it's a little bit harder to navigate, you can narrow that down. We've asked the donation sites to provide us county. We have a list of the items that they'll accept, so you can sort of sort by that. Not everybody accepts corn stalks. The only thing everyone accepts are pumpkins. So you can narrow it down to where you need to. You schedule and you pick your time to deliver. Each donation site in their profile has the opportunity to identify when and how they would like to receive donations. If they're at a farmer's market, they might be willing to accept it there. In other cases, they may say, hey, drop it off at the end of the driveway. And some have been generous enough to say, hey, the animals are right there. Feel free to just chuck it over the fence, which is, a really good example for people to see how it's being used right away. And then you go ahead and do your drop off. And we hope that folks will take photos and share on social media just how easy it is for people to do this on a regular basis. So these are some photos from the last couple of weeks on some of the things that we've been doing. We've had a big collection there on the top left, with our donation site on the top right, receiving. We had over 100. We had about 100 pumpkins of various sizes, and we've had an opportunity. We had they had a small petting zoo, which was fun because it got kids to understand that donkeys will eat them and sheep will eat them, and not in the chickens and things like that. And then, some of the collection events in other places in the country there on the bottom right of how people are doing that. Our website now, we revamped our website for 2024, and we now have a resources page, and we're always looking for additional information to share with the public and make it easy for them to make better choices. On the top, it includes what would be obvious. How can you prepare your pumpkin to make sure that it is still a viable donation when you're done with it? We also have a lot of local and other small businesses and nonprofits that are trying to help people make different choices about how they can reduce their waste, whether it's food or holistically, and how they can be smart about buying food that might be close to the end of life at a grocery store, but are still viable. And we also have the local self-reliance, which has a big composting group nationwide. And then finally, we'd like folks to understand that there's a variety of national and international organizations that have programs that we can learn from. And it could be, well, what does a best by date mean versus what's an expiration date, or understanding what's being done worldwide. So, for example, in June of this year, the EPA, DA, and FDA came together with a bold goal of cutting food waste by 50% by 2030, which is in alignment with the UN sustainability targets. So if you do have pumpkins still, I imagine it's a lot colder there, so they're probably in much better shape than they are here in Virginia, where it's a bit hot. But we like to be real clear on what is or isn't okay. Water-based paints and markers and glue and things like that will come off, and that makes them still viable. But for those that chose to use permanent markers and melted crayons, and we've had some that came through that just had, these beautifully decorated with gemstones, and it was just absolutely, not possible to separate them. I think the big key here is that donations need to be free of mold and rot. And those timelines are pretty short, which is why we're trying to work with more composters moving forward. So getting involved is pretty easy. We do have a page on our website that says getting involved, and there's opportunities to volunteer your time to coordinate a pumpkin collection. Just spread the word with other people that you know. You can follow, like, share, and tag us on the various social media platforms. We're mostly on Instagram and Facebook. We do have it on LinkedIn. We do have a channel on YouTube, so you can see some other videos. We're always looking to have folks join our leadership team. We've started a newsletter this year, so we'd welcome you to join that as well. And then, of course, financially support. We have an objective to raise $10,000 by the end of the year to offset some of the costs we've incurred this year and hopefully give us a little bit of a cushion for next year. These are a few of the animals and photos that I took in the first probably 2 years that I did it, 2 or 3 years. And these are some of my favorites, and just some local places that, have no longer in business. But, it was just so great to see the variety and just such a learning curve. So this is how you can find us, pumpkinsforpigs.org. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, as well as LinkedIn and other platforms. So let me pause there and open it for conversation.